Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. My name is Reverend Connie Simon, and we are glad that you're with us in person or virtually this morning. Our urban religious community welcomes all with love, supports learning and spiritual growth, serves the wider community, and works for justice, equity, and inclusion. If you'd like to know more about First Unitarian Church or Unitarian Universalism or any of our community programming, please email us at member-care@firstuu.com. We begin our service today, as we do every Sunday, with the lighting of our chalice, the chosen symbol of our faith. We do so this morning with the words of Lois E. Van Leer. We light this chalice not because we must, but because we may. We light this chalice not because we have the truth, but because we each come bearing and seeking many truths. We light this chalice in connection across culture, distance, class, and language. We light this chalice that our religion may be a beacon of light, hope, and justice. We light this chalice to kindle our hearts and our minds.
First, a quick note to our viewers. Every year, the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati holds an auction. The proceeds from that auction go to pay off the mortgage on our building and capital projects throughout the year. For this year's auction, I put up a Time for All Ages. The winner of the Time for All Ages could then choose a story, which I would feature on a future Sunday. Today is that Sunday. The winner this year was Gary Gephardt. Gary says this was his favorite story to read to his children as they were growing up. Caps for Sale, a tale of a peddler, some monkeys, and their monkey business. Written and illustrated by Esfer Slobankina. Once, there was a peddler who sold caps. But he was not like an ordinary peddler, carrying his wares on his back. He carried them on top of his head. First, he had on his own checked cap, then a bunch of gray caps, then a bunch of brown caps, then a bunch of blue caps, and on the very top, a bunch of red caps. He walked up and down the streets, holding himself very straight so as not to upset his caps. As he went along, he called, "Caps, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap." One morning, he couldn't sell any caps. He walked up the street, and he walked down the street, calling, "Caps! Caps for sale! 50 cents a cap!" But nobody wanted any caps that morning. Nobody wanted even a red cap. He began to feel very hungry, but he had no money for lunch. "I think I'll go for a walk in the country," said he. And he walked out of town, slowly, slowly, so as not to upset his caps. He walked for a long time, until he came to a big tree. "That's a nice place for a rest," he thought. And he sat down very slowly under the tree and leaned back little by little against the tree trunk so as not to disturb the caps on his head. Then he put up his hand to feel if they were straight. First, his own checked cap, then the gray caps, then the brown caps, then the blue caps, then the red caps on the very top. They were all there, so he went to sleep. He slept for a long time. When he woke up, he was refreshed and rested. But before standing up, he felt with his hand to make sure his caps were in the right place. All he felt was his own checked cap. He looked to the right of him. No caps. He looked to the left of him. No caps. He looked in back of him. No caps. He looked behind the tree. No caps. Then he looked up into the tree. And what do you think he saw? On every branch sat a monkey. On every monkey was a gray or a brown or a blue or a red cap. The peddler looked at the monkeys. The monkeys looked at the peddler. He didn't know what to do. Finally, he spoke to them. "You monkeys, you," he said, shaking a finger at them. "You give me back my caps." But the monkeys only shook their fingers back at him and said, "Tss, tss, tss." This made the peddler angry. So he shook both hands at them and said, "You monkeys, you give me back my caps." But the monkeys only shook both their hands back at him and said, "Tss, tss, tss." Now, he felt quite angry. He stamped his foot and he said, "You monkeys, you better give me back my caps." But the monkeys only stamped their feet back at him and said, "Tss, tss, tss." By this time, the peddler was really very, very angry. He stamped both his feet and shouted, "You monkeys, you must give me back my caps." But The monkeys only stamped both their feet back at him and said, "Tss, tss, tss." At last, he became so angry that he pulled off his own cap, threw it on the ground, and began to walk away. But then, each monkey pulled off his cap, and all the gray caps, and all the brown caps, and all the blue caps, and all the red caps came flying down out of the tree. So, the peddler picked up his caps and put them back on his head. First, his own checked cap, then the gray caps, then the brown caps, then the blue caps, then the red caps on the very top. And slowly, he walked back to town calling, "Caps! Caps for sale! 50 cents a cap!" The end. In our story today, there was a trend. The monkeys kept doing exactly what the peddler did. I wonder, did you recognize this? Do you think you would have caught on before the peddler did? Today, some First Church members are going to recap the trends from UUA General Assembly 2021.
This morning, we woke to the news that the number of cases of the coronavirus, especially the Delta variant of COVID-19, in this country are skyrocketing. The cases are not going down. Several states no longer have ICU beds for patients. In Tennessee this morning, I heard that one hospital is rationing care because there's simply not enough space, not enough equipment to care for all those in need. So this morning, I ask that we all hold in our hearts all of those who are affected by COVID-19. Those who have already lost loved ones, those whose loved ones are very ill and may not receive the care they need to survive, the doctors and nurses and healthcare workers who are spending hour after hour after hour trying to save as many people as they can. The public health workers, the public service workers, the police, the firemen, the first responders, everyone who's responding to those 911 calls when someone becomes severely ill. The children who cannot be vaccinated and probably are the most vulnerable in this entire situation, just because some refuse to be vaccinated, or refuse to wear masks, or refuse to follow COVID protocols. And we pray too for our political leaders, for those who are on both sides of this issue, and for the hope that maybe they'll see that there really aren't sides. Maybe there's only one thing that matters: everyone's health. And for those who think that it's still a hoax, that the vaccines are a hoax, that this is an abridgment of their freedom, even those well-meaning souls who say, we want to get back to normal. I've been vaccinated. Why can't my world go back to normal? Turn on the news and we see why it can't. For myself personally, I pray for the strength every day to remember that it's not about me. Yes, I am vaccinated. The likelihood that I would be hospitalized or die if I were to catch COVID, slim to none. But it's not about me. It's about protecting the most vulnerable in our society. It's about continuing to love those who cannot see the wisdom of getting a vaccination. It's about protecting society as a whole. We hold all of those tensions and all of those hopes and fears and prayers in our hearts today. And we drop a stone for all of them. We drop another stone this morning for our siblings in Haiti, the site of yet another devastating earthquake. We drop a stone for those who are struggling with poverty and loneliness and unemployment and depression and injustice. We drop these stones in water as a way of trying to heal our hearts and soothe our pains. This water represents the love and the power of love that's found in this congregation and all of our hopes for one another. By dropping these stones in here, you can see that they are surrounded by that love. And hopefully, some of the sorrow there is softened by that love. One sorrow that's difficult to soften, difficult to fathom, is the loss of a loved one. This morning, our hearts go out to the Newman family, Barbara and her children, Jenny and Brian, as today they prepare to memorialize their husband and father, John Newman, who passed away on July 19th. We also hold our prayers for members of this congregation who continue to heal and to deal with illness. For Leslie, for Alan, for Nancy, for Mike, all those who are healing. And at the same time, we celebrate our joys. Our joy that our beloved Dick Bozian is with us for 102nd birthday this past week. The joy that we are all still here, period, and able to be together. So we drop a big stone for that joy. And let it work its magic on some of our sorrows as well. For those we have named, for those whose names we do not know, and for those whose names are carefully guarded in our hearts, we drop a final stone in the water. Please join me now in a moment of silent meditation, reflection, or prayer as we focus on these beautiful flowers given by Barbara Newman in honor of her husband, John. Their wedding anniversary was August the 10th. And please join me in sending them love and comfort. Every month, our congregation devotes its offering plate to an organization in Cincinnati that is serving the community. For the month of August, our Share the Plate beneficiary is Working in Neighborhoods. Since 1978, Working in Neighborhoods has developed sustainable communities by empowering Cincinnati neighbors to build equity for themselves and their families, and to develop win-win goals for their neighborhoods. WIN's strategy is organic, connecting shared neighborhood needs with broader economic resources. It supports people of all faiths and cultures in their pursuit of justice. It does this by leveraging partnerships with the banking community and local, state, and federal government resources to build support for homeownership, especially for African American families who more often face evictions or foreclosures. WIN builds neighborhood engagement through youth enrichment and summer camps, increasing access to healthy food, safe traffic patterns, internet access, and leveraging secure housing units for seniors and other low-income tenants. If you'd like more information about the work of WIN, please visit their website at www.wincincy.org. To make a donation, you may text the word GIVE to 513-717-7373. If you have access to our Breeze member system, you may click Give Now. You may also donate online at www.firstuu.com. With each of these methods, you'll be given an opportunity to direct your gift to WIN. You may also mail a check to 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219. Please write WIN on the memo line. If this is your first time visiting, please let the virtual offering plate pass you by. Your presence is your gift to us. Our offering will now be gratefully received. General Assembly, GA, UUA. What do those initials mean? They're thrown around a lot in Unitarian Universalism, and often folks aren't quite clear what they are. GA is General Assembly. UUA is short for the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. That is our denominational body. I use those dreaded air quotes in that instance because some would say that perhaps we are not a denomination at all. We are a movement. It is true that we are not a denomination in the sense that Methodism is, or that Catholicism is. There is no governing body that tells Unitarian Universalists what to do, or what to think, or how to believe. In fact, that is one of the core principles of our faith, is that each of us is on our own spiritual journey. And within each of these congregations, which are just communities of people who have chosen to be together, They have made a covenant to behave a certain way together, to love one another, to respect one another. That's covenant. Within each of these communities, they have the right to elect their own officers and set their own guidelines for behavior within that community. This comes from the Cambridge Platform of 1648, which was a gathering of people, not of priests, not of high-ranking folks, but of common people who got together and said, this is the way we think we should be when we are together. Among the things that they said is, we must treat one another with respect. Our individual congregations have the right to govern themselves, to elect their own officers, to build their own buildings, to manage their own finances, to do whatever they see fit or see is best for their congregation. But they do not act alone. The Cambridge Platform of 1648 says that all of our individual congregations also have an obligation of mutual care, of consultation, of admonition, and participation with other congregations. No congregation is an island. Autonomy and self-governance are wonderful things, but they are not meant to operate just in a vacuum. So we have this thing, this body, that is called the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. Now, where did it come from? We'll see the next slide, please. This is a photograph taken in 1959 of American Unitarian Association President Dana McLean Greeley on the left, and on the right is Philip Randall Giles, who was the superintendent of the Universalist Church of America. This was ahead of the vote where the two organizations, the two denominations, decided to come together as one to form the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, the UUA as we know it today. The UUA is, by its own bylaws, a voluntary association of autonomous, self-governing congregations who gather together freely and have chosen to pursue common goals together. The work of the UUA is accomplished by the appointment and sending of delegates from each congregation to a General Assembly. That General Assembly of delegates and others votes on the direction that the Association of Congregations will take in matters of policy and operations and social justice. Every congregation is not a member of the UUA, and it doesn't have to be. Only those congregations that choose to be members of the UUA are part of it. You may ask, well, what are the benefits if they're self-governing? Why do they need to be part of this? By leveraging the power of more than 1,000 congregations together, the UUA is able to do credentialing for our religious educators, for our ministers. It's able to support the development of faith-based trainings for lay leaders. It's able to produce religious education materials for our youth, for our young adults and for our adults. It's able to create and to purchase, I should say, insurance and other kinds of employee resources for us, where one congregation may not be large enough to provide health benefits for its employees. The UUA can do that. And all of that work is accomplished at General Assembly, where anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5,000 people may gather in person to do the business of the association. Next slide, please. I have for you a series of images that show you what General Assembly is like. When it's in person, it opens with a banner parade. Someone asked me recently about the banner that's hanging in this building and said, "What is that for? Why do we have that?" This is what that banner is for. With thousands of people cheering, members from each congregation proudly parade through the auditorium bearing the flag of their congregation. There is work done at General Assembly. Here you see the members of the Commission on Institutional Change talking about the release of the Widening the Circle of Concern report, an anti-racism, anti-oppression manual that was issued last year. Here are images of our youth being engaged. There are microphones set up, a pro mic, a con mic, and a mic with questions. And our youth come to General Assembly in record numbers and let their feelings be heard on many, many issues. We have worship that is amazing at our General Assembly. There's music of all types. There is singing, congregational singing. There's nothing more amazing than being part of a choir of 2,000 or 3,000 people singing in joy. There is a choir every year, and anyone can be part of the General Assembly choir. All it takes is a click on your computer. You're given the music and you are invited to sing. There is business done. Here you see the moderator of a particular event leading a discussion on an issue. I'm not sure what year this was. This looks like New Orleans, a couple of years ago. But leading a discussion on a particular issue. And there is voting. Everyone who comes who is a delegate gets to vote. The number of delegates per congregation is determined by the size of the congregation. There's another image of those voting. There are social justice and witnessing events. There are fun events. There's entertainment. There are all kinds of things present at General Assembly for people to attend. With the onset of COVID, we've had to make things virtual. We still have a virtual choir for General Assembly. Here you see it. Next slide, please. And the business of the association still gets done. Here is UUA trustee Greg Boyd leading a discussion on a particular issue. It may look a little complicated there, but actually what this is the app that we use to run General Assembly. There is a screen in the middle that is captioned to make it accessible for the most people. Along the side, you can visit any exhibitor. You can look at individual workshops. You can find documents and information. On the right is where you vote. We voted electronically, and at the bottom are chat rooms. where people are typing fast and furious in conversation with friends and complete strangers from around the country and around the world. General Assembly is quite an event. This year was, as I said, was our second GA that was virtual. And we sent our delegates, as First Church has for many years, and I've invited them to each share their reflections, their perspectives on GA. What stood out the most for them? What was the most amazing part of it, and what will they take from it? And we'll begin those reflections with Dan Schneider now.
Hello. My name is Dan Schneider. I would like to begin by reading my report on General Assembly that appeared in a recent newsletter. This year, the General Assembly, in 3 votes, expressed its will that the Unitarian Universalist Association, UUA, support anti-racism and the undoing of white supremacy. The General Assembly approved by an overwhelming majority, 92%, a statement of conscience on undoing white supremacy. The statement was based on a congregational study action issue that was approved at the 2018 General Assembly. At our January congregational meeting, our church members voted unanimously to instruct our delegates to support this statement. In addition, the General Assembly voted by an overwhelming majority, 91%, to support including anti-racism in the current reconsideration of the principles of Unitarian Universalism. In a contested election for the UUA Board of Trustees, the delegates elected 87%, a candidate who supports the Widening the Circle of Concern report that we have been discussing over the past year. The opposing candidate expressed strong concerns about the report and about talking about white supremacy within Unitarian Universalism. When Janet and I first entered the doors of this church 16 years ago, one of the things that interested us about this church was a commitment to racial justice. In fact, our first contact with this church was listening to Reverend Sharon Dittmar speak at a Martin Luther King Day celebration. During the years following, I have witnessed our church's commitment to racial justice. When I was social justice co-chair, our congregation voted overwhelmingly to become the first local UU congregation to place a Black Lives Matter banner outside our building. Following the 2017 controversy over the hiring of a lead person for one of the UUA regions, leading to the resignation of the UUA president and the appointment of 3 Black interim co-presidents, I attended the UUA General Assembly in New Orleans. One of those co-presidents was Reverend Bill Sinkford, a son of this congregation. I have a vivid memory of Reverend Sinkford referring to the empowerment controversy that split the UUA during the late 1960s. He said the UUA missed an opportunity to fully engage and support Blacks and other people of color who were part of Unitarian Universalism, leading many of them, including Reverend Bill, to leave Unitarian Universalism. This exodus greatly harmed our religious movement. Much later, Reverend Bill returned to become a UU minister and the first Black president of the UUA. In New Orleans, he urged us to try to learn from the past and not make the same mistakes all over again. I have tried to keep that statement at the front of my consciousness over the last few years as our congregation called our first black minister, and as Unitarian Universalists everywhere began to hear and participate in a lot of conversation about white supremacy culture and its unhealthy impact on all of us. Following the New Orleans General Assembly, the UUA leadership empowered a group of church leaders to research and write a report called Widening the Circle of Concern that focuses on problems faced by people of color within Unitarian Universalism. Over the past year, members of our church have discussed this report in some depth. This year, I participated in Beloved Conversations, an anti-racism discussion series involving Unitarian Universalists nationwide. I have learned a lot from all of this, but I will summarize by saying that I do not believe being non-racist is enough. I believe we need to be explicitly anti-racist. That is why I was pleased with the vote outcomes I mentioned in our newsletter. I respect the candidate who did not get elected and those who voted a different way from the majority. I believe we agree on a goal of creating a multicultural Unitarian Universalist community, and I believe we disagree on how to achieve that goal. I believe the votes represent the democratic voice of Unitarian Universalists nationwide and within this congregation.
Good morning to everybody, including Ridley. I'm Lenny Alos, one of your delegates, and one of more than 2,000 delegates from several hundred churches. And so when Dan was talking about how these decisions were made, it was a huge decision made by a huge number of people, and it's what we need to live up to now. So when people ask me when I got back from GA, what did I think of it? I said, ask me in 2 to 3 years, because that's when we will see how we live out or don't live out this commitment to widening the circle. And I felt we delegates from First Church were probably better prepared than many delegates there, because Reverend Connie had led us through a monthly discussion of every chapter in Widening the Circle. And if you didn't read that, that's the future of this denomination, and you can read it online for free at uua.org. So like Dan, I was impressed and gratified, not just that there was a movement towards adopting actions that would fulfill Widening the Circle, but the percentage of yes votes, it was resounding. It was in the every vote was in the 90 percentile. Some were 99%, and as Dan mentioned, in a high-profile election of the trustees, it was 87% in favor of moving forward with Widening the Circle support. And here's my however. I felt there was a large degree of naivete among everybody attending the General Assembly. And I can say that because I'm, like you, a member of First Unitarian Church. And 5 years ago it was when we embarked on a search for a new minister, and we surveyed the congregation, and what did they want? They wanted 2 things, way over and above everything else. 1 was inclusion, and 2 was preserve our sense of community. Well, I think we've learned in the past 5 years, and as Dan alluded to, we are still learning how difficult that is to achieve. We've learned that it's not inclusion we're after. We have to jump the bar and go higher to equity. So we're not just opening our doors to everybody. We're saying when you come in, you have as much right as I do, a longtime member, to making decisions and determining the future of this church and of the denomination. We were so fortunate. I realized that this summer when I listened to what everybody was saying online, and I read all the chat rooms comments that Reverend Connie mentioned. We were so fortunate to attract a minister to this church. It doesn't matter if it's a minister of color or not, but we've got a minister who truly understands oppression, who has lived it, and who truly understands equity. She's lived it, and who has truly understands change and how radical it is and how hard it is to accomplish. So as I sat in my desk chair for dozens of hours at home, zooming into GA, Bill Sinkford's words kept echoing in my brain. So he came here and delivered the homily for Reverend Connie's installation 3 years ago. And you might remember this. What did he talk about? The Cambridge platform, and even the ministers laughed that he was going to try to teach us that history. But the lesson that I remembered wasn't all the details of the Cambridge platform. It was his message about the law of change. Do you remember when he sat here? He must have told us this 6 times. If there's an action here, there's going to be a subsequent reaction somewhere else. Push here, tug there. And we have lived through pushes and tugs in this congregation, and we still are, especially as we begin this process this year of learning to covenant. Of everything I heard at GA, and I heard a lot, and fortunately, because it was Zoom this year, I could go back and listen to the recordings of sessions that I was unable to attend live. So I've probably, in effect, attended at least 30 sessions in business meetings out of about 150. But there was one thing that happened on day 2 that really gripped me. It was like an earthquake hit me. And it was Reverend Meg Riley. And you might remember her. She's visited this church a number of years ago. And she's also the person responsible for the Side with Love campaign. She was looking at widening the circle and talking about how difficult change is, how uncertain it is, how controversial it is, how challenging it is. And yet she was also looking at I'll call it a North Star. It's the UU principles are our North Star in why we are doing this work and why we have to keep doing it until we get it right. So I'm going to read you exactly what I heard Meg Riley say to all of us. White supremacy, transphobia, heterosexism, ableism, ageism, classism, misogyny. We're tired of hearing those lists over and over. But think about how exhausting it is to live in one of the bodies targeted by those systems of oppression. Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt asked recently in a sermon where she preached at an ordination, she asked, "Who are we using as kindling to ensure that our chalices stay lit? Who are we using as kindling to assure that our chalices stay lit?" She said, "I stopped breathing when she heard those words." She said, "I thought of particular loved ones, their names, faces, bodies, some alive, some dead, some hollowed out husks of their former selves, who had fled our faith for their lives." And she concluded, "I have experienced the other side, privilege, and I have witnessed and been part of change. I know we can do the hard work of transformation. I have lived it. That work is never more needed than it is now." And so I came home from GA, and I thought, we can take our congregation from inclusion to equity. We can take our congregation from community to covenant. We can do this. We can be the fullness of our faith. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lois Gish. General is not understood by some individuals, so it is helpful to speak more slowly. I learned that many disabled people cannot work for losing the very Medicaid benefits that are keeping them alive. This was new for me to think about. Disability justice is anti-capitalist because capitalism values people based on their productivity. This means that under capitalism, some people are literally worth more than others, and those that are worth less are frequently excluded, shut out, and made invisible. Did you know that disabled people with COVID-19 are less likely to get a needed ventilator if supplies are limited? Disability justice says all bodies and minds are unique with both strengths and needs. What is a just world like? Here are a few phrases: accessibility, inclusion, representation. A living wage for all, universal health care. Most of us have some sort of disability now, but it is almost inevitable that we will encounter more disabilities as we live. Will we see new disabilities in ourselves and others as something tragic, or as another life challenge that does not take away from our inherent worth? I learned living disabled lives openly without shame is a revolutionary act. I am who I am. We are enough. We are fully human. We are all worthy of love. I will end with the rallying cry of the disability justice movement. Nothing about us without us. May it be so.
My name is Patricia Rohr. This year, I attended GA for the first time. It was a very interesting year to attend, especially since the entire event was online. This created opportunities and challenges. Opportunities included being able to see many workshops because everything was recorded. If you had a scheduling conflict, you could just watch the other workshop later. I think it also allowed people to attend who otherwise would not be able to due to family obligations, work, monetary restrictions, inability to travel, or any other reason. A big challenge for me was feeling really connected with what was going on. Yes, I attended the workshops, but due to the online chat option, I could either try to keep up with the chat or focus on the speaker. It was hard to do both. I also couldn't easily meet with people outside of the scheduled sessions. But opportunities and challenges aside, it was still a great experience. It felt good talking to members of other churches and realizing that we're not alone. A lot of churches have had the same conversations, struggles, and growth we have experienced. I really loved the morning grounding workshops. Seeing the different approaches to worship was really interesting, and I was especially touched by the one titled Healing Through Indigenous Storytelling and Ceremony, refocusing on being one with nature and making sure we pass on the world as a better place to the next generation really spoke to me. Finally, as I already said in my newsletter article, I got a new mantra out of the general sessions. We did a thing. I learned that something didn't have to be finished and perfect to celebrate it as an accomplishment. Take the time to appreciate the small steps we complete, find the joy in even the most mundane task, and encourage each other to keep going.
For sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, and your perspectives. There's nothing more I can say about General Assembly that hasn't already been said or that you likely haven't already picked up on your own. So I will leave you with this beautiful charge from Judith Meyer. This is what we do with our faith. Live in this world knowing that we will lose each other. Loving despite the hard bargain it demands of us. Doing what we can so that truth may be safely lived. Measuring our faith by the difference we have made. And building up faith communities to continue after we are gone. I know we can do this. I know we can do this. Please join me in singing along to this video of our hymn number 1015, I Know We Can.
Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. When sorrow heaves my soul and burdens make me strong, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. My family in my heart, my friends in my song, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, the destination is near, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. So friends, take my hand, and family, sing my song. When hope awaits at every turn, I know we will go on.
Please join me now in speaking the words that appear on the screen as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace. As we transition into our world of service and prepare to leave this space, I'd like to share with you some announcements. Today at 3 o'clock, we will be hosting a celebration of life of John Paul Newman. Will happen at 3 o'clock on YouTube. There is also space for limited attendance for family visitation at 2 o'clock and watching the service live in the sanctuary. Our reopening update. We continue to monitor the situation. RSVPs are required, face masks are required. There will be no childcare, RE, or youth groups, and our services, as always, will be available on YouTube. Please watch your email and watch our website for news as to coming services.